Hi, welcome to Behind the Storyteller, a notified podcast. I'm your host, Alan Murphy, and I'm joined in the studio here with my co-hosts, Caroline Cullinan and Pat O'Rourke.
Hey, y'all.
How's it going?
And this is the podcast where we take professionals from the worlds of IR and PR, or the corporate storytellers, and we give them the opportunity to share their story because they maybe don't always get the opportunity to do so. We're going to be doing that by taking a look at our guest, who's going to be our character of today's story. We're going to take a look at some sort of a conflict or a struggle or something that needed resolving, whether it's professionally, personally. I frankly don't care too much. And then we're going to wrap it up with a resolution to that conflict. And so for today's episode, we have Michael Kaye. He's the director of brand marketing and communications at Match Group. Michael, did I do that right? I know I was practicing earlier.
You crushed it.
Yes. All right, cool. Podcast over. Great to have you. We'll see you later. No, thank you so much for joining us today. And where are you joining us from?
I'm here in New York, in downtown.
Okay. So Michael, like I said earlier in the introduction, we wanna get to know you, the character in our story. So where do you want to start with that? Are we going as far back as your birth? Because these are comfy seats. We've got all day if we need to.
Oh, there's so much to uncover if I go all the way that far back. We can start wherever. We can start when I joined this company, because that's when I feel like all these like brand new challenges that I had never faced before in my career were presented to me. So for like a very short background, prior to Match Group, I spent about 5 years on the agency side working with some really big brands, which meant I never really had a problem of budget. I didn't really have a problem of people knowing who my client was, and that was absolutely amazing. And then I got the opportunity to join the team here at OkCupid, first leading PR for the brand in the US. And I had been off dating apps for 5 years at that point. So I actually was not even familiar with what OkCupid was. I met my now fiance on Tinder. He is the first and only date I've ever been on. So for anyone listening who's knocking dating apps, they literally work. Sometimes they work even better than others. So so I had no idea what OkCupid was. And I remember asking my cousin, who's a few years younger than me, what she thought about the brand. And she was like, "Oh, I know OkCupid. That's for our parents. That's for, much older people." And
I'm sorry, what year was this when there was that perception of OkCupid?
This had to be 2019, because I joined in July 2019.
Okay, that's making a little bit of sense, because I was on like OkCupid and Tinder and stuff, but that was back in like 2012, 2013, 2014, like right around that range.
Oh, you were really early. Tinder started in 2012.
Yeah. And so like when I was on those apps, the perception that I had was OkCupid was for the people who were my age. And there were other services and other websites. I'm like, oh, that's for like the divorced parents. I don't want to be on those. So it's interesting how in like just a few years after that perception flipped, at least from my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I heard Tinder for the first time 2 weeks after I had graduated college. And I was on a trip with my guy friends, and one of them was meeting up with a girl that he met on Tinder. And I thought, wait a minute, you're meeting up with a stranger that you met on an app on your phone? Like, it was so foreign to me.
Also, everything our parents told us not to do when we were growing up and like getting on the internet the first time.
It's the same with Uber or Lyft.
Yeah, you're getting in their car.
Don't talk to strangers. Don't get in a stranger's car. Cut to now, where we're calling up strangers and getting into their cars to take us someplace.
And it's just weird. It's kind of fun and exciting to see that change, because now I'll have girlfriends be like, "Oh my God, I met the creepiest guy last night," and I was like, "What did he do?" And she's like, "He came up to me in a bar."
Yeah.
And I was like,
oh yeah.
So like we've just, everything's changed, and it's really exciting to see. I think being part of the queer community too, like queer people were really early adopters to online dating. So it's been normalized for us for such a long time. But we're not too far from having the first generation that is born to mostly couples who met online. And I think that's that makes my job really cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like it was something that was introduced to all of us, after adulthood and everything. But yeah, there's going to be kids whose parents met on Tinder, OkCupid, or what I don't even know how many apps are out there now. Like those are my frames of reference. I'm so behind.
And it's kind of funny because it used to be, or at least the perception was, you don't want to tell people, oh, I met my boyfriend or girlfriend on a website, a dating app. It felt like a matchmaker, like going back into the olden times, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, or when I was a young kid. But now that's just the way that it is. And, Michael mentioned, oh, it's creepy that somebody came up and talked to me at a bar.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, I'm the elder statesman of at least our group, and I believe Michael as well. I have no problem with that. I'm still shy as anything, and I don't want to talk to people in a bar normally.
Yeah.
But give me a little liquid courage, and that's my preferred method of going up and talking to people, because you can only get so much of a sense online. But I still use, some of the apps that are out there as part of the queer community. It sometimes skews a little bit differently, but it's such a balance of trying to find the online world and how to navigate that piece of it, and how to navigate in real life, because eventually you have to come off of the app and meet the person in real life.
Yeah.
You would hope.
Going back to the challenge, one of you brought it up, and I'm forgetting who mentioned this, but one of you had mentioned that there's a lot of dating apps out there. And when I first joined OkCupid, I think a couple of challenges bubbled to the surface. First was, okay, here I am in a brand new industry. I've never worked in dating before. And I'm working at an app that at this point today has been around for over 20 years. So we're not the new shiny toy on the block, which means we're not going to really be clickbait for an editor, and they're not going to most likely be putting OkCupid into a headline. So from a PR perspective, that's a really big challenge. Another one, which y'all mentioned earlier, is there's a lot of apps out there. This is such a crowded space. It's hard to lock down an exact number, but there's multiple reports out there that say there's over 1,500 dating apps. So having 1,500 competitors is part of the million things that keep me up at night. And I realized, okay, there's a lot going against me here. I'm joining this legacy brand. I'm not at Hinge or Tinder, which are two of the newer, most popular ones. I know so many people. I mean, we met on Tinder, and our officiant at our wedding met his fiance on Hinge. So I hear those apps all the time. And at this point in my career, I've been here 6 years, so I know a ton of OkCupid couples. But when I first joined, I thought, how am I going to break through the noise? How am I, as one person at a legacy brand, going to really make OkCupid culturally relevant again?
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to speak to different people at the company, I recognized that our core product differentiator, which is our matching question. So if you've never been on OkCupid, we have thousands of questions in our app. That's how we connect people we feel are most compatible. So when you see another user, you'll get a match percentage. That tells you how compatible you are. You can even click it and see where you agree and where you disagree, which I think is a really fun feature. But on the back end, what that gives me in the comms marketing space is a ton of really rich data. And the amount of data that we have is really unmatched when you look at any of the other dating apps. Like, our data storytelling, I think, is top tier. That's probably because I'm the one doing it, but also because I really do think it's top tier. My first couple of months, I remember thinking, okay, how am I going to tell a story that's going to get OkCupid to be top of mind for Gen Z, for millennials, but it's also a story that our competitors can't have a POV on. Like, I want a story where they won't be able to insert themselves into the conversation. And when I was looking at our data, I thought it was fascinating that we had maybe a handful of questions about climate change. And climate change at the time, and very much still is today, was such a trending topic in the media and on social. And I looked at our questions and I noticed that people had answered them about 15 million times. That's a huge sample size. And 97% of our data said climate change is real. And more than 8 in 10 daters were really concerned about climate change. And that was really the first big story I told here at OkCupid. And it was really that we're the only dating app in the world that is matching people over a shared passion for the environment and concern over global warming. And it did really well for us. And I'll pause for a second because it spurred so much more here.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I remember, when I was on OkCupid answering all those questions, and I didn't really think about the fact that there's probably millions of other people who are answering these exact same questions. What a focus group size. Like that's such a great way to learn more about the values of the community. And then that can help shape the way in which you're telling the OkCupid story from there. That's a really interesting way to do so.
Yeah. And what's fun is that we can look at the data and slice it in so many different ways. So we can see how people in New York feel compared to people in Boston or Chicago or US versus Canada versus Israel versus UK, millennials versus Gen Z, women versus men versus non-binary people, straight versus queer. There's so many different ways to slice the data. And this wound up becoming a really, really big story for us. It led to our first ever dating trend, which was about, 2 people matching online over shared belief in climate change. We wound up partnering with Earth Day Initiative and then later earthday.org. We wound up introducing a brand new product feature called the Climate Change Advocate Badge. That was only live 2 months ever, and it was during Earth Month in April, 2 years in a row. We had more than 500,000 people added to their profile. And I still see OkCupid being brought into conversations around climate change to this day in 2025. And this story was first told in December 2019.
And I'm just curious. I don't know if this is me digressing a little bit too much, but when looking at the responses that are coming through and seeing them from such large, such huge populations across so many different demographics, were there any trends in responses that you found to be particularly surprising, or anything that was like especially noteworthy that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I mean, yes, in general. Outside of this story, the questions tell us a lot, more so that the responses tell us a lot. So we're not only looking into how people are responding to a question, we look at how that changes over time. And we also look at how important that question is to someone. So we can tell when we're introducing new questions, we can tell what categories or what topics people are not interested in, if they're skipping it, or if they're ranking it as not important to them. But going back to I think the data that always is most interesting to me is how people's views on something change over time.
Actually, I wanted to ask this because I'm not familiar with it. How often do you ask these questions to the daters? Or is it something that they can, like, let's say I join, I answer, I fill out the questionnaire, here's what my answers are. And a month from now, I say, you know what? My thoughts have changed about some of these things. Let me go in and update. What is that process like so you can see how those shifts happen? Is it something that's regularly done, or is it kind of user driven on when they go back in and update those questions?
Yeah, so the way it works is when you download OkCupid and create an account, you have to answer 15 questions. That's mandatory for us, but there's not a single question on the app that's mandatory. So you just have to answer 15. We'll show you 15. If there's one where you're like, that makes me uncomfortable, or that's not relevant for me, you can skip it and move on. And once you answer those questions, most people go on to answer dozens and dozens more. It's almost gamified. I remember when I first started, I was playing around with our questions. I wound up answering over 100, and I was like, well, I actually got to do some work now. So it's fun and it's mindless, but you can at all times go back and change your answer. The questions that you answer will live within your profile, so you can see what you've answered and change it if needed. But the questions we're always adding new questions, and we're always sunsetting new questions. So if we had questions about who are you going to vote for in the presidential election, which we tend to stay away from those, but we would sunset it because in June, at the time of us recording this, that doesn't make sense anymore.
Right.
And we're doing that all the time. So if you're talking about something with your family or your friends or your coworkers, chances are we started asking it on OkCupid.
It's so cool how quickly you can respond to what's happening in the world and current events. And I mean, what was the turnaround time for that?
If we're talking right now and a question comes to mind and I'm like, we should add that, I could add that within seconds. And then it's live in the app. And then
wow,
within a day or two, we have thousands and thousands of responses.
I could not be given that power because I'd be like, what should I eat for dinner on Friday? And just get the responses and be like, all right, I'm getting pizza. Cool.
It almost sounds like polling, what political candidates put out there, but it's just within the dating world. There was something that you said that I loved. I feel like it's definitely different than other dating apps too, is you said like the conversations you're having with your friends and family, you can put out there in a question. And I feel like that cuts through the awkwardness of every like conversation with a new person, because you're having these deep conversations without actually having them. You know what the answer is going to be before you ask it.
Or at the very least, like, oh, this is a safe topic to bring up.
Yes.
This is someone where like, we're aligned enough on this where I can feel comfortable bringing it up rather than being like, am I about to ruin the date just by bringing up this single topic? That's a really good way to kind of alleviate that first date anxiety. Like not that like, their life story yet, it's still, you have the opportunity to get to know them. But you kind of know what's safe and what's not to talk about.
Again, to your point, we really think of OkCupid as like this platform that fosters connection and conversation. And there's so many conversations that are just uncomfortable or awkward for people. And if we can make this a little bit easier for you, that's what we see as our main job. If we can help people navigate these tougher conversations, that's amazing. And we have a responsibility to do that as a platform with millions of people. And those questions have been answered in the millions of times. So people felt comfortable doing it on their phone where they could like maybe take a minute and think about it, and be a little bit introspective. So yeah, we take our questions seriously. That's not to say that there's not a ton of fun ones though too.
Yeah, it's kind of like the questions are serving a lot of purposes when you look at it that way. Because like, yes, on the one hand, it's helping you match up with people who are like-minded, but it's also like you were saying, if it's a sensitive topic that you feel a way about it, but you maybe don't know how to express it or even how to think about it in some ways. These questions can kind of help someone navigate their own thoughts and their own feelings on it. So in a way, it's like, yes, it's helping match you with someone, but it's also kind of helping you find a little bit more about yourself and do a better job of articulating who you are.
Yeah. When we're writing questions, I can say we. So I write the questions, and one thing, there's a couple things to think about. I want to make sure that it's something that's relevant right now to the dater in this country. So we have localized questions in over 30 markets around the world. So if you're dating in the UK, you're going to see different questions than someone in Israel or someone in India or someone in Japan or Mexico, or kind of list goes on. So it has to be culturally relevant. It has to somehow tie back to dating and relationships. It has to be able to be answered by both parties. So as much as I would love to ask, what is your favorite Real Housewives franchise? That usually, not to stereotype here, but usually in a straight relationship, there's not an overwhelming amount of straight men who are going to be able to answer that.
I would skip that one.
I was going to say, Alan, what's your favorite franchise?
I would skip that if it wasn't obvious.
So there's a lot of like different factors to think about, and then we get even deeper on like how we're wording it, because we don't want to be leading with our questions. That's really important to us too. So there's a lot to think about, and we do take it really seriously. And we've gone through exercises of cleaning up questions, because as you can imagine, what we were asking in 2004, 5, 6, it's a completely different climate and culture today. We don't talk the same. We don't think about things the same. So it's a constant refresh.
Yeah, even as you were talking about like the amount of questions and the types of questions that are being asked now, I'm thinking back to when I was on OkCupid. I'm like, if I were to, and Amy, my wife, if you're watching this, I'm not going to reactivate my account. I'm very happily married. But if, let's say I were to find myself single again and I'm, back on OkCupid, if I were to look at those questions that I answered, I'm sure like at least half of them I would want to update now. Like a lot changes in 11 years.
One would hope. If not, then...
That's true.
That's a different conversation for a different time.
Well, Michael, I know we're coming up on around the 30-minute mark here, and I want to thank you so much for all these stories. This has been a really, really interesting way of looking at the industry and how you can really use that data, the survey responses to help shape OkCupid's story. Are there any other sort of final thoughts or things that you'd like to share before we wrap things up today?
Yeah, I would say don't shy away from being as creative as possible. I think you don't need this huge budget to make a lot of noise and make an impact. And I think sometimes we get stuck in, oh, I don't have $10 million to do this. I'm lucky if I have $10,000 to do something. Maybe that's a little bit more dramatic than needed. But, I remember I was really struggling on how to catapult OkCupid back into the cultural zeitgeist at the beginning of 2023. And no one knew this at the time, but we were busy building Archer, which is a dating app for gay men. So we didn't have a huge marketing budget for OkCupid, and we didn't have product support because we were literally building an app from scratch. And at the time, there were so many conversations around ChatGPT and AI. And I thought, okay, how do I connect OkCupid to ChatGPT? And then I said, okay, it has to drive back to our questions. I write our questions, but ChatGPT can write them for me, and made that connection. And OkCupid made this huge splash for being the first dating app to leverage ChatGPT. And that cost me $0. And it was just a fun, creative brainstorm. And I think that's just like one example of, you don't need these big budgets of like a Google or an Instagram or Coca-Cola or whatever the brand is. You can still make a lot of noise. And sometimes it just takes a creative idea and some data and kind of frame it in the right way. But any brand of any size can do this.
Isn't it more fun too when you have zero budget and you're making a big splash versus if you have a ton and you don't? So
it's way more fun.
Michael, I think that's about all the time that we have. Again, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation about a world that I used to be a bit more familiar with, and now I kind of feel like I've got a better understanding. But thank you for your time. And for all the listeners or the viewers watching at home, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you.